If there's a pilot who is offended by the word wife or the word cockpit, maybe that person shouldn't be a pilot. So rather than kowtowing to people who are fragile, maybe we should actually say, if you're so worried about the words that we are using, you shouldn't be flying, multi-ton metal engines through the sky.
Hey guys, welcome to PolitiBrawl News. This is Matt Miller. Watch this disturbing exchange with then Senator JD Vance questioning Biden's FAA Administrator about their new inclusive language initiative. This is now more relevant than it's ever been before, and it's hard to watch, but watch it right here.
I want to ask, did the FAA issue a 176-page guidance document changing notices to airmen to notices of air mission in December of 2021?
We did.
This was in part to avoid using the gender term airman, correct?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay. On November 10th, 2021, the FAA held an inclusive language summit. Are you familiar with this effort?
I am familiar with it.
Okay. During the summit, which had a solicitation published in the Federal Register, Deputy Administrator Mims stated that when we use terms like airmen or unmanned aircraft, sorry, I'm laughing because this has to be a joke, we're sending a message that only men belong in the aerospace community. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, Senator, what I could say is that having been a pilot for 42 years and seeing the evolution of our aerospace industry, I started out in helicopters and have flown as a captain in big jetliners.
Sure.
Not everyone is a pilot today. We have drones, we have spacecraft, And so I do believe going to notices to air missions is absolutely the right thing to do. It is an accurate reflection of where our aerospace system is today. Fully supportive of that. And none of that, by the way, detracts from our mission, which is the safety of our airspace, and that will always be our North Star.
Yeah, I think the point is, if it makes sense for some aviation reason, that's fine. If it makes sense purely to avoid gendered language, it seems like an unnecessary preoccupation with the words that you're using and that we're using rather than the work that we're doing. I want to just ask a couple of additional questions about this summit. The public notice for the meeting stated, if any individual employer, contractor, or industry partner feels excluded or marginalized because of language or words, the work of the agency suffers. Do you agree that the feelings of FAA employees about language are this important?
What I agree is that as we seek to attract the next generation of people into aerospace, mostly they won't look like the people sitting in this room. And so it's our ability to say, how do we bring tomorrow into today, into an industry that is evolving right before our eyes? So our ability to find inclusive ways of reaching underrepresented groups is a right path to be on.
Okay, I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the Drone Advisory Committee public ebook. I have it right here. This document uses the term wife as an example of the type of language that we need to eliminate. Is that something you support?
I'm sorry, could you restate the question? I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, I just said, so I'm asking unanimous consent, first of all, to enter this into the record, but it explains that wife, the word wife, is an example of the type of language that we need to eliminate. And I'm just asking if that's something you think is necessary or something you support.
I'd have to give that one some more thought.
Well, I would hope that the word wife is not something that or is something that we can all agree is a reasonable vocabulary word that most Americans use in their daily life. It's not something that we need to eliminate. I don't have much time here, so I would just ask here, at the same summit, during a panel called How the FAA is Pushing Gender Language Boundaries, the panelists stated that FAA leadership brought us to where we are here today. We see the recommendations from the committee as a foundation, but it's also just the beginning of the conversation. It strikes me that preoccupying ourselves so much with the words that we use rather than the work that we do, especially as our infrastructure appears to be crumbling and we've had major flight outages the last couple of years, is at best a distraction and at worst a thing that takes attention away from focusing on the real problems. I worry, when I represent the people of Ohio, and I'm very confident that the majority of Ohioans, if there's a pilot who is offended by the word wife or the word cockpit, maybe that person shouldn't be a pilot. So rather than kowtowing to people who are fragile, maybe we should actually say, if you're so worried about the words that we are using, you shouldn't be flying, multi-ton metal engines through the sky. And I just ask all of us to maybe try to focus as much on real problems, like the fact that our aviation system seems to not be working as well as it used to, than the fact that we may use uninclusive or under-inclusive language. Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Nolan. I
Baldwin.
appreciate it.
Ben says he was laughing because this has to be a joke. Well, this isn't a joke. This is really actually reflective of the people that the Biden administration was employing in these critical positions in the FAA and other parts of government. And I'm not saying that this one gentleman here is entirely responsible for the tragedy that we saw a few days ago, but I think it's reflective of the attitudes that the Biden administration was pushing forward, that the people the Biden administration supported and put into these positions, the attitudes that they had that are actually dangerous. This isn't just an ideological difference to have a debate on. It is objectively dangerous to hire people, to appoint people strictly on the basis of their skin color, their demographic background, or their gender identity, any of these superficial attributes that have nothing to do with competence, efficacy, safety, qualification, real qualifications, experience. Those are the things. They should make instead of DEI, it should be safety, efficacy, and competence. Let's make that the conservative DEI. But no, it's heartbreaking and it's frustrating to hear somebody like him say, I don't know if we should remove the word wife from our vocabulary in the FAA because it might be offensive. Are you kidding me? I want you to focus on making sure that every screw in the airplane is perfectly tight, that every airplane has enough fuel, that there's there's less than a zero chance that there's ever going to be a midair collision or anything horrific like that. When all of that is insured 100%, then if you want to ban the word wife, I literally don't care. But clearly, these airplanes and air safety is not at a place where we can afford to spend time and resources talking and worrying about gendered language or removing the word cockpit. I mean, I don't think, it's not funny anymore. I mean, it is, I understand what JD Vance was saying, that this is so ridiculous, it almost makes you laugh a little bit, but we're seeing, I think, possibly, and Trump likened this the day after it happened, after the horrible, tragic crash happened, and he brought up DEI. And initially I was like, wait a sec, this is a little bit too early for that, or we don't even know who the pilots are yet, and we're already connecting this to DEI. But as time has gone on here, I think that he might have been onto something, and I think that sort of messaging is very relevant. I mean, we're going to find out the concrete details about who was the helicopter pilot, who was the pilot in the plane, and based on some of the radio back and forth that I heard from the plane to the air traffic control and with the helicopter, it seemed like the plane, the commercial airline, had the right of way. They were doing what they were supposed to be doing, and it was the helicopter and the helicopter pilot that made a mistake that led to the collision. So we definitely have a right to know who was the pilot. Who are these people that put them and hired them or promoted them to this position? And what was their experience level? How often have they flown Black Hawk helicopters at night? I mean, and this wouldn't even fall under the FAA's purview. This would fall under the Pentagon or the military personnel. We saw the military and the Pentagon get woke under the Biden administration as well. And I think many of the same prevailing dangerous attitudes that prioritize demographic staffing and meeting demographic quotas were prevalent in the military and the Pentagon, just like the FAA. But that's the point. It's that these critical positions where we need the most competent people, the most experienced people, regardless of skin color, regardless if they're men or women, we're not putting the best people in there, or we haven't been over the last 4 years. And now we may be seeing the consequences of that. I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of Trump's response to the tragic midair collision in Washington, D.C. this week? Let me know in the comments. Did you think that his messaging was a little bit off color or maybe a little bit too soon to be talking about politics and DEI? Or do you think that he was right on the pulse? If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We're always trying to bring you guys relevant news clips, but also things like this that are flashbacks that are relevant to the news cycle conversation that we're having right now. So we're going to be the ones that dig up the clips that are important that people have forgotten about. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I'll see you next time.